Hi, this is Eric Beyer of Old Vine, Texas, a new winery tasting room featuring 100% Texas wines from wineries all over the state. We are located in Mansfield, Texas, inside of Ancora Event Center on Broad Street. We have weekly tastings, charcuterie board to enjoy, live music, and a new wine club. Go visit our website at oldvinetexas.com to sign up for our newsletter and learn more. Or you can find us on Facebook and Instagram at Old Vine, Texas. We'll see you soon.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the main event. Are you ready to pop your cork? In the left corner at 6'4", 242 pounds, with a record of 45-0, the undisputed.
Hey, Michael.
Hey, Will.
Hey, how many bottles of wine have you had?
Well, Will, it's not the wine. I'm just so excited about the podcast.
Yeah, I am too. But this is not a boxing match. This is We Know Texas Vino.
Hey everyone, welcome back to part 2 of episode 85. Chris, Bill, and I had a blast with this episode, and I hope you've enjoyed it so far. Also, have you checked out our episode on YouTube yet? What are your thoughts so far? Leave us some feedback, and if you have not checked us out yet, find us on YouTube at We Know Texas Vino. Also, do not forget Season 3 kickoff party is January the 25th at 555 Winery and Vineyards in Valley View, Texas. The party will kick off at 1 p.m. and will last till about 3. Come out, check us out, meet us, meet fellow Texas wine lovers. Now, enjoy the second half of this episode. Cheers.
That's a good kind of segue,
yes,
I think, into just what's happening in the industry, the wine industry.
Yes.
We talk about competition.
Well, let's talk about
things like that.
Let's talk about how 2024 was for the Texas wine industry, and not just Texas wine industry, but even for what's going on.
I think
globally.
the whole wine industry,
Yes.
globally. I would say globally, of course, the wine industry has been down for a few years. It's there's been kind of a shift in drinking styles, people kind of doing low alcohol, no alcohol. There's been kind of a transition between the generations as well. I know that right now in the California wine industry, they're overplanted by about 100,000 acres of vines. And that's hard to comprehend, that many acres.
Well, and let's talk about that. I want your opinion on this. I have my opinions on this. Okay. All right. So a lot of those vineyards, they're pulling up 100 plus year old vines. Okay. So these vines has got personality now. They've been through a lot of wildfires. They've been through the changes of seasons. They've been through a lot of different environmental terroir things. Okay. But they're keeping the 1 and 2 year old vines and pulling up the 100 year old vines. How do you feel about that?
So that's kind of I think that's a different topic in terms of just the overall wine industry. I think that the struggle right now for those wineries is they need to make a profit, right? And it's difficult for them right now. So when you get a vineyard that's over, say, 30, 40 years old, the chemistry becomes very consistent from year to year, but the crop load is very, very low. Mm-hmm. And so when you look at a vineyard that's maybe producing a quarter of a ton, maybe half a ton per acre, and you need that vineyard to produce 4 to 5 tons an acre to even stay in business, then it becomes more almost like a labor of love that you're keeping those vineyards. So 100-acre vineyard, it's a tough choice for a winemaker and a winery. You're thinking to yourself, I really want to keep this vineyard because of the history of it and because of everything this vineyard has been through. On the other hand, if I keep this vineyard, I'm going to go out of business. Right. And then someone else is going to come along anyway and tear it out. Yeah. Right. So I would rather replant my own vineyard rather than lose my winery. Right.
That's fair.
Yeah. A lot of vineyards in Dry Creek Valley, Russian River Valley that were planted as Zinfandel have been pulled out because Zinfandel's a hard sell to the consumer, even though I think they're mesmerizing wines. But you can't sell a bottle of Zinfandel with $75, but you sure can get $75 for a bottle of Pinot, and that's what they're planting out there. So I know one specific vineyard out there that I met the great grandson of the gentleman that planted it in 1925, and that vineyard is still there in the family's name. But there's less and less of that out there. whether that has to do with the movie Sideways or not. I'm sure there's something to do with that. But, you're seeing Zinfandel, Merlot, stuff like that become less and less planted and made. And you're seeing obviously more Pinot and stuff like that that bring more money. Because like you said, these wineries in the end, especially out there, it's costly to make wine out in California.
Well, and it's because their cost of living is so much higher than what we have here. And so, to make, one case of wine, it's going to cost them double what it is here, but I guess I can see your point as, again, to me personally, I still wouldn't pull up 100 plus year old vines.
Right.
I mean, that's just me. I mean, when you have something that has personality, yes, people look at me when I say grapes have personality. Well, everything, what's what I'm looking for what is the word I'm looking for? Adapt. Every a plant always adapts to its environment. And so when it does that, it changes taste and it changes flavors. It changes everything. So this one year, these one grapevines, the grapes off of this vine right here will taste one way. But the next year, because we had wildfires over here and it took on some of that smoke on there, at least the next year, these vines will taste more smoky than previously, That's what I look at. But at the same time, I see it from a standpoint as a financial thing, those are not going to be making money because people are not drinking them no more.
Yeah, and the winery has to stay in business. Otherwise, that wine goes away. I think those vineyards can survive, but they would need to be part of a larger operation where that small vineyard can stay the way it is, but the winery has plenty of other well-producing vineyards to support it.
Right.
But I think if you're a small business, if you're a small winery and you're making 500, maybe 1,000 cases and your vineyard is 100 years old, I don't know. Unless you can charge $500 a bottle, I don't know how you. I don't know how you do it.
I'm just going to say Robert Clay charges $600 for his Sanjo.
That's how you do it. That would be how you accomplish that.
I mean, but in his defense, the Sanjo he's got was 25 years old.
Yes, and how many bottles of it does he have? Right.
So. And he also ages all of that. So when you open that bottle, you're not having to age it no more yourself.
Okay, sure.
So he does all the bottle aging for you.
Yeah. So he kind of took the hit, carrying that cost for 25 years.
Yes.
And so that's why that wine is there. Yeah.
But let me tell you something. If you want to drink a bottle of $600 wine, that's the man to go get it from.
That's the man. Okay. I've heard about this before. Yeah.
It's actually, it's pretty amazing. Yeah. Pretty amazing. I think I had a small little tear come out of the side of my mouth.
That's good. You found a good Texan wine. That's awesome. Yeah.
Well, most definitely. So
there you go.
So,
so kind of back to that conversation about California and where the industry's going. That's
squirrels all over the place.
Yeah, that's good. The other issue too is that you look at an acre of Valley Floor in Napa, it's $100,000, $200,000, $300,000 for an acre. That's unplanted. That's just the dirt.
Yes.
To install the vineyard, go through the permitting, you're looking at $500,000 an acre.
Yeah, and do that same here in Texas. What is that?
Do the math, right? Oh, in Texas, if you go to the high plains, probably $10,000 an acre to buy the ground and plant the vineyard to it.
Yeah.
So the economics are far more feasible in Texas than in California. As a matter of fact, there's a lot of California wineries now coming to Texas.
I was about to say that.
Because they can go other places in Texas. They can plant vineyards. Mm-hmm. They can actually harvest the grapes, refrigerate them, and send them back to California cheaper than they can grow them in California. That's starting to happen.
Yeah. But here's what's crazy.
That's really stunning when you think about it.
It's crazy. When California, they've got so much grapes over there that they're like dime a dozen now, But when you take Texas fruit and you want to ship it to California, it's more expensive.
Oh, yeah.
It's premium. It's premium grapes, That's it.
Yeah. So they're kind of working out those economics, and there's actually quite a lot of California wineries now moving to Texas, or at least building part of their operation in Texas and building tasting rooms here and things like that. So that's something that the Texas industry is also having to figure out. How do we work with that?
How can we be, okay, I'm going to say this word and you can hit me off camera. How can we be a little bit more friendly? I know we had this discussion off camera and off recording. and we have our feelings about this. And so we're not going to bash anything. We're going to talk in a friendly manner.
Of course.
But I mean, how can we be more friendly to these California wineries that are coming in and taking over and selling California wines and not doing Texas wines? I'm gonna preface this first, because one of my first wineries I did in Fredericksburg. Well, sorry, one of my few first ones I've done was Serrano. Mm-hmm. They were from Paso. They openly admit from Paso, and they were selling their Paso wines, but they were aggressively planting their own vineyard to be 100% Texas and not relied on Paso, which I commend them for that, because they were trying to get away from the California stuff, and they really love the Texas environment. They love the Texas terroir, and they wanted to support the Texas wine industry, and I commend them for that. But the new winery that came into town is Halter Ranch, and a lot of people were very upset. A lot of the vineyards, a lot of the wineries were very upset about them because they were dumping all this money into media and getting all the attention for themselves, and not saying, hey, drink Texas wine. Oh, by the way, come visit us. And I think that rubbed a lot of people really wrong. And there's some other stuff. We won't talk about the other stuff, the stuff that there's rumor mills going on. We won't talk about factual stuff. I know for myself, every time I opened up Google or opened up Facebook, the first thing I always saw was Halter Ranch is coming to the Hill Country. And it was on every news media outlet. And I'm like, this is crazy. You coming in here into Texas. I wouldn't be coming. If I came to your house, I'm not going to sit there and say, I'm over here at your house. I'm going to do this at your house. I'm going to do this at your house. I'm going to do this at your house. No, I'm going to like, hey, can I do this at your house? Can I do this at your house? I'm going to promote your house before I promote myself. And they rubbed a lot of people wrong. I'm not going to lie. They rubbed a lot of people wrong.
I am going to go to the tasting room now as my shift is starting. It is 1:00.
Okay.
I didn't realize it was that late.
Oh, it's already 1:00?
Yes, it is. So I'm going to, because I'm the lead over there today.
Okay.
So.
Well, the boss is sitting right here.
I know.
I was just going to say.
Is it okay?
Yeah. If you can, if you'd like to stay.
I would.
Yeah.
I will text Neil if they don't need me.
Yeah. Go and text Neil and find out.
Very good. Because I would like to stay in.
Because we're getting into some
really good stuff.
Some
now.
heart and soul of
we're getting the
conversation
now.
here. Yeah.
Yeah.
Love the wines, but this is like the heart and soul of it.
Yes.
So this is like a double-edged sword for the Texas wine industry. If I had any advice that I would give to a California winery coming into the Texas wine region, I would say this. Have Texas wines in your tasting room along with your California wines. You don't need to hide the fact that your California wines are from California.
Right.
Just be honest with the consumer about it. Consumers will reward you for your honesty.
Correct.
So in your tasting room, have your California wines with your California labels on them. And then right next to that, have your Texas wines with your Texas labels on them. And by Texas wines, I mean wines made from grapes grown in Texas.
What is it? 85%? Has to be 85% Texas?
75, I think.
Yeah, and those percentages are changing based on certain things with the viticultural areas and things like that. But what I would encourage them to do is to put both into their tasting rooms. And be honest about it with the consumer.
Right.
Because what's going to happen is the consumer is going to come into your tasting room and they're going to try the California wines. And then they're going to try the Texas wines and they're going to say, wait a minute, the Texas wines are every bit as good as the California wines. And it could be as well, not just that those people are surprised by that, but they learn more about Texas wine, but it could be that there's people that would not even try Texas wines.
Correct.
But they will go into your tasting room because they want a California wine. And that's your chance then to show them, let's try Texas wine along with my California wine.
Yeah.
That is actually, Texans are very adventurous people. We have wine, we have spirits, we have beer, we have all kinds of alcoholic beverages that we make now in the state. And Texans are very open to trying new things.
Right.
I think maybe somehow people think that Texans are going to be closed-minded about when they go out to eat or when they go out to have a good time. No, they're going to be very open-minded. So take that open-mindedness and use that in your tasting room.
Right.
Show them both to your California wines and the Texas wines. Use that as an opportunity.
Yeah.
And like I said, be honest with them. The one thing Texans don't like is for you to put
the blinders on us.
Yeah, put a label on your bottle that says Texas on it or something like that, but actually the wine was made in California.
Right.
Texans don't like that.
Yep.
They feel like they've been snowed when you do that.
Bamboozled.
Bamboozled.
I like
Yes.
that word. I don't know why. I like
okay, bamboozled. So that's the first thing, right?
Or what they could do is they could take California grapes and then take a percentage of Texas grapes and make a
Sure, you could do that too. You could make a blend like that if you wanted to promote or market that kind of wine. I guess that's just my first advice to California wineries is yes, we do want your dollars in the state, obviously. And we do want more wineries in the state because it helps to build a wine culture, which is good for all of us. But what we don't want is dishonesty in the tasting room.
There was when Halter Ranch was coming in to Texas, there was something that came up on one of the wine drinker pages, wine lovers, whatever, and it got into that debate.
Oh man, it got nasty.
And, I got. I'm not gonna lie, I got roasted on that from a couple people because my point was, you stop worrying about what everybody else is doing and worry about what you're doing.
Right.
That's the first thing. The second thing is, if you do that and you continue to make a good product and people are enjoying your tasting room and everything like that, and your business model is going really well, then who cares? I mean, yes, it's funneling money into the state. They're providing jobs and everything like that. So, I mean, we're a welcoming people in Texas, so you're not going to stop it.
Right.
I do think, though, that, and I know there's a point counterpoint. Texas should be 100% Texas fruit. That's my opinion.
I'm with you on that.
However, there's often times where you don't have the grape availability to be able to do that.
Almost impossible.
So that's the point counterpoint.
Yeah.
So, I think labeling, like Chris was talking about, is honesty. I think Texas needs to do a little bit better about labeling. It's got to say Texas on the front label to be a Texas wine.
Yeah,
we know that.
I agree with that.
But it is a dicey situation. And what do you do? Texas wineries are not going to California to make wine for obvious reasons, but they are going to come here. And they're coming here from Washington. You've got Covington Hills Cellars in Johnson City. They make some really nice wines, but they're vested in making Texas wines, and they planted a vineyard. So yes, you commend them and you want to see those wineries succeed. Yep. But if I'm going to a Texas tasting room, I'm going into Texas wines. That's my thing.
Well, my last trip I took down to the Hill Country, I was told I need to go to Coordinate Cellars. And
Austin.
And they were mostly a South African winery. And got to talking with them, and he kind of actually helped me change my feelings about being 100% Texas. Because if you're coming in and you want to start a winery up, sometimes getting the wines for Texas is kind of hard to get started. You got to find the custom crush facilities like Sage Vintage, or you got to find Kerrville Hills, and then you've got to get in at the beginning of the season. You can't come in the middle of the season, so it's really hard to get started. And so, and I can't remember their names, but they have the tasting room there in High, and they have a tasting room in Fredericksburg.
It's a guy named Austin, if I remember correctly.
Austin, yes. And he said that he wants to do Texas wines. He loves Texas wines. And he says, I just could not financially get started in it right away. So he knew about brokeraging South African wines. And I'm like, okay, this is fair. I can handle this, because you're trying to start out. And in fact, actually, when you pull into his tasting room in High, I think it was, he has like a half acre vineyard right there in front, and that they were fixing to harvest that year for the very first time. So I'm like, okay. And then he said he got grapes coming in from, I believe he said the High Plains also. So I get that, and if that's what Halter Ranch is doing, okay, I'm 100% on board with that. Come in, bring your California wine in, but let's get you some Texas wines on your board as well. So, I want people to come in. I want people to try different stuff, because they're going to taste wine from South Africa. They're going to taste wine from Washington. They're going to taste wine from California, yada, yada, yada. And then they're going to turn around and try something from Texas. And they're going to say, wow, this Texas wine can hold up and compete to X.
Right. Yes, and you get to meet the producer, and you can actually walk through the vineyard.
Yep.
You can actually visit the winery, see the winemaker, talk to the winemaker. Yes. There have been so many times when I've traveled to other wine regions outside of Texas where I never get to meet anybody. I never get to meet the winemaker. They've got me in a room someplace, and even some of the people don't even really know much about the wine that I'm talking to. And so the great thing about Texas is that because the wineries are smaller, you actually get to meet the people that make the wines.
I was literally going to make that comment.
Yeah. That's one of the things. That's one of the unique things that I also want to say about this issue is that Texas has still a lot of camaraderie between the wineries. It is not really that way so much anymore outside of Texas, especially on the West Coast. There's pockets of it, sure, but it's very competitive now on the West Coast. It's very competitive. And I don't want Texas to lose that camaraderie between the wineries. We have the North Texas Winery Association up here in North Texas. It represents, 40 plus wineries. There's the Texas Hill Country winery group. There's other winery groups around the state. I really want to encourage Texas to keep that camaraderie.
Oh, yes.
Because I've seen it gone in the opposite direction in other places, and it's just dog eat dog.
Oh, yeah.
I don't think you'll see that happen in Texas because of the mindset of the people in Texas. I mean, I'm from New York, and I've been down here 40 years, and I tell people that, yes, there's the New York state of mind. I still have a little bit of that. But Texas has a mindset that's we're proud people here in Texas, and they like their Texas wines, and they will support the industry. Right. And I think you're always going to have that, like Chris says, the camaraderie. I don't think that'll ever wane in the state of Texas. Yeah. It's a different animal.
One of the things that I hear a lot in the tasting room is people say, "Oh, I went to Napa and I went to the tasting room here, and I sat down in the tasting room and I got to look at the vineyard." I was like, "Did you get to take a tour of the vineyard?" They said, "No, we couldn't do that." And I'm like, "Okay, did you get to talk to the winemaker?" "Oh, no, he was gone somewhere else." and I'm like, "So you talked to the tasting room attendants?" And they're like, "Yes." I said, "Let me tell you something about Texas then." I said, majority of the tasting rooms here in Texas, with the slide of a few larger ones, you can go to the tasting room and there's a very good chance you're going to be talking to the winemaker. Very good chance. Unless it's during production season, then the chances are zero. Yeah. It ain't happening. I said, but there's a very good chance outside of production season. And then they will say, when is production season? And I'll say, well, it's usually from January till about October, August, somewhere in there. And they're like, oh, okay. And I said, but you go in there, there's a good chance you're going to talk to the winemaker. And there's a good chance a lot of them will take you into the production room, give you a tour of the production room so you can see what it's like for making wine. I said, I'm not saying that all California wineries won't do that, but I'm just saying here in Texas, there's a very good chance that will happen.
Right. And I'd like to say this too, that there's something happening right now between the West Coast and the Texas wine region where they're going like this. And that is on the West Coast, because it does take $500,000 to plant an acre and grow it up and make wine from it. I hope you like Chardonnay. I hope you like Cabernet, because that's what you're going to get. And because that's the only, the grapes that can demand that price per bottle, that's what you have to plant.
Right.
It's almost like this self-selecting process happening now on the West Coast, And so I met with several winemakers when I was in Napa, one of which was Gustavo Brambilla. Had a great time with him. We were talking about it before the show here. And we were just talking about how the main differences now between a new wine region like Texas and an older wine region like the West Coast is that Texas has this chance right now to experiment. And Texas, because of its climate, because it is different than the West Coast, it also means it can grow different wine grapes than what you would see on the West Coast that would appeal to a lot of people, a lot of the newer generations. In Texas, because of our climate, we can do a wonderful job with Italian and Spanish varietals, Southern French varietals. So there's nearly every kind of Italian and Spanish grape you can think of right now being planted and being made wine from in Texas. And that's one of the strengths of Texas is that you can walk into a tasting room and get a Tempranillo or a Sangiovese, or you can get a Montepulciano, you can get Negro Amaro, you can get a Vermentino or an Albarino. You can get an Alicante Bouchette or something like that. I mean, there's all kinds of different grapes that maybe you've never even tried before. You're able to walk into a Texas tasting room and try something like those, something completely different than Chardonnay and Cabernet.
You know, one of my favorite things to do in the tasting room, and this makes me smile every time this happens, okay? People come in and they're like, I want to do a tasting. I'm like, okay, what do you like to, what is your go-to? You know, those are the top 3 wines they always say. Pinot Noir, Merlot, or Cab Sauv. Yeah. And then I turn around and I tell them, not today, they're not. And the look on their face are like, who are you to tell me what I'm drinking today? But I tell them, I said, explore. I said, you're coming into a tasting room. They've got all these different great wines. Explore. Try something new. You may find something that you've never tried before. And so they're like, okay, well, what do you have? And that's where I go in and I ask them, what did you eat? And then I start pairing with what they had previously, you know? And like one of the top ones that people like right now is the Toronto that Bob blended. And when people say, oh, I like Merlot or Cab Sauv.
Bingham makes a great Toronto.
Yes, I know.
So I do. Here's a question. So if somebody says Pinot to you, what's the first grape that comes out of your mind to say, oh, if you like Pinot, then you're going to like this?
Usually when someone says Pinot, I usually gravitate immediately to like a Petit Verdot or even a Tannat. Even though it's a darker, bolder, people tend to only like stuff they've grown up drinking, if that makes sense. Because if you've always been drinking Pinot Noir, your palate is used to that, and you've not explored anything deeper and more I want to say obtrusive, but more advanced. Let's use the word advanced, okay? So I give them a Petit Verdot, I give them a Tannat, or even a Meritage. I'll even do a Rot Bang Meritage, and when they drink it, they're like, I've been missing out. And I was like, well, it's because you've been drinking something really light. Actually, to be really honest, I call Pinot Noir and Pinot Grigio the training wheels of wine. Well, I mean, Pinot Noir and Pinot Grigio are really basic wines. Not heavy dry, not very acidic, just very basics.
I can see how the bodies wouldn't be as heavy.
Yeah. And so people, who just start drinking out wines like to drink that stuff. I want them to get excited. I want them to try.
I want that excitement too. Yeah. So like when I was having a tasting with Gustavo, by the way, for your audience, so Gustavo Brambilla, he was actually played by an actor in the movie Bottle Shock. So when you watch the movie Bottle Shock and you hear the character's name Gustavo, that was Gustavo Brambilla, and you can actually go to his tasting room in downtown Napa and see him. He's like one of the few Napa Valley winemakers you can actually just book an appointment with and have a tasting with him. It's great. He can kind of give you the whole story of the Paris tasting and all those things that happened during that time. Well, anyway, so he was pouring us his Barbera.
Yeah.
And I was like, finally, something else besides a Chardonnay, And he's like, yeah, I get this Barbera from this other part of the county, that kind of thing. And it was fantastic. I mean, it was one of the best Barberas I've ever had. Yeah. And I'm thinking it was almost like a tear in my eye. I'm like, because in about 10 years, this vineyard's probably going to get ripped out and planted to, something else that, is a higher price per bottle. Right. And so he was having us try his Barbera because he was like, one of the great sweet spots that Texas has is that you can grow Barbera in Texas. You can make a great Barbera in Texas. You have all these other great varieties that you can do in Texas now that we really can't do anymore in California because of economics.
Right. And, and I'll tell you right now, one winery that I know of that does Barbera is Edge of the Lake.
Yes.
And he has a great Barbera.
Yeah.
Great.
And by the way, guys, when we say KK Hartman, we were talking about her in the show. KK is her nickname. Her first name is actually Krista, but you can call her KK. She's fine with that. Yeah,
she's
if
funny.
You're just looking her up on the internet, it's Krista Hartman.
Or Red River Provisions.
Red River Provisions, yes.
We have a wine club member here that has a winery out in Mendocino. He's North Coast.
Okay.
And he literally planted Alianico in his vineyard because of the Alianico that Chris makes. He loves Alianico. So he said, I'm going to try it out here. So
Alianico is okay, first off.
It's an unsung hero in Texas, man. The barbecue, when you have it with barbecue, it's just like,
why did you just do that
made to go with barbecue.
Like literally, I was trying not to think about barbecue and you said that. Now
wait a minute. What's your favorite barbecue joint though?
It's called the Will Donahue's.
Will Donahue's?
Yeah.
Will Donahue's.
We haven't been there, have we?
I've not been to Will. Have you been to Will
No,
Donahue's?
I've not.
Are you trying to say that I need to cook for y'all? Because I mean,
We keep reverting back to this, so something's going to happen.
You know what? Let's figure something out. I make some of these best freaking ribs. Like my dad is very. I know this is sidetracked.
Oh, really?
This,
yeah. Okay. Now wait a minute. Now I've got a friend named Mark Sharon who lives up here in North Texas. He doesn't have a store, but I'm telling you, that guy's barbecue is the best I've ever had.
I'm just going to talk about my ribs. Okay, that's all I'm going to talk about.
Ribs.
Just ribs. Okay, my dad is very particular about his ribs. There was one barbecue place he would eat ribs from, and he will never eat it from anywhere else. For Father's Day one year, I made 5 racks of ribs for Father's Day, and he devoured 1.5 racks by himself. And I looked at him and I said, I guess you hate my ribs. And he goes, yeah, I hate them so much. I'm going to take this other rack over here and eat them. But I'm just going to give you the little secret about my ribs, and it's called butter. And when I say butter, I'm actually literally mean butter. Butter is the key to it. And it takes about 4 hours to cook my ribs. And it's lip smacking good. I mean, you know what? You've heard the term slap your mama good. These are slap your mama good.
We should definitely get together and make some barbecue.
I have no problem.
We'll get my friend Mark Sharon over, man. We'll get his smoker going. And
you know what? I will load up my smoker over here and I'll bring it out here and we will fire it up and we'll make some ribs and pour some wine. And
by the way, you're right. Anthony Bourdain said that what makes restaurant food great? Butter. Yeah, it's the key ingredient.
Oh yeah, most definitely.
Well, so Ionico, a Southern Italian grape, hard to pronounce, I know, because it has like this G in it, but you don't pronounce the G. When the Italians get going really fast, they just say Ionico. They start leaving out a whole lot of letters. But it's this beautiful wine. It's got like this dried plum flavor with like this black pepper kind of finish. Mm-hmm. And man, when you have that with like some burnt ends from brisket. Oh, man. Or, you get some good ribs going. Oh yeah. And it was just made for it. So, I mean, I have not been to Italy. I do want to go to Italy.
Yeah, I know, right?
But I don't know if they have I'm sure they don't have a barbecue culture in
Probably
Italy.
Not.
But man, if ever there was,
they do a lot of smoke, open grilled pork in Italy, especially.
Yeah. But it's not the barbecue like we know here.
No, because their food is so regional. Yeah. From, if you're in Tuscany, rabbit is a big thing. If you're in Umbria, it's pork. So, but Aglianico, interesting is one thing that Texas has done for me. I've been in the industry since 2013. Started drinking Texas wine around 2011. Mm-hmm. Texas was my introduction to rosé, Aglianico, Montepulciano. I'd never had these wines really ever before. If I did, I didn't know about it. Right. So as I advanced in this industry over the years and my wine clubs I've had, I wound up with a cellar that has about 600 bottles of wine in it. And about 2/3 to 80% of it is Texas. Right. That's pretty much what I drink on a regular basis. And I go back and it's always Montepulciano, Tempranillo blends, but I love the Viognier too. That was the other grape that I got into in Texas, and I'm a big Viognier fan. So it was interesting that my introduction to a lot of grapes from around the world was because of what they were making in Texas. And that's something that, like you said, in California, it's going to be Cabernet, Meritage blend, Chardonnay, and Pinot, but that's what you're going to get. But in Texas, there's so many, even though we don't have a lot of different grapes planted in this state, we have a very varied industry on what we make. And that's really cool.
So with that being said, Sandy Rhodes,
nice.
He's making a wine right now that he is the only winery in the United States growing this grape. And if you ask me to enunciate it, it ain't happening. So if you're better at English than I am, there is the
Prieto Percudo.
Yes. And it was actually at the Lone Star wine competition. And they had brought it out with a whole bunch of other Pinot Noirs because it was the only one that had this. And I looked at it and I said, that's not a Pinot Noir. I mean, you could just see it, but it had few characteristics of a Pinot. And I'm like, what is this? So I took a picture of the number and stuff like that so I can find it later on. And I drank it and I'm like, holy crap, what is this? And so when they pulled the cover back from the Lone Star and we got to go look at the wines and stuff, I saw that and I fell in love with it. And every time I would go down there at Sandy Roads, they're closed because, I mean, I was off time or they were having a party of some sort, a private party, so I couldn't buy anything. So I'm hoping they're listening to this episode and hopefully I can get a bottle before it sells out because it's a members only bottle.
Yeah. I hope he's encouraged by this episode too, because I do want to say to my fellow winemakers in Texas, that I feel that's the future for Texas moving forward, is experimenting and making wine from all these other grapes that you don't see on like the West Coast and other places. Even my wine professors, when I was I went to Grayson College to get my winemaking and viticulture training, and sorry if I see something, it's okay. And so one of my wine teachers there said, we're really worried that a lot of grape varieties are going to go extinct. I mean, there's close to 3,000 wine grape varietals in the world, and people drink like 5 of them.
Yes.
Yeah. All because they've just never been exposed or never had the chance to drink these other varietals. Well, here in Texas is a place where they can finally do that.
Yes.
And so I want to encourage my fellow Texas winemakers. That's, for me, that is one of the roads forward for the Texas wine industry, is making wine from these Italian and Spanish and Southern French varietals that are, though they are old European vines, they're wines that are new to people.
Right.
That's the sweet spot, I feel, going forward for the Texas industry.
Well, the one grape that I'm happy to see starting to pop up is Graciano.
Oh, Graciano is so good.
And I know, more props to KK up there at Red River. Is she actually, I think, just bottled her estate Graciano.
Graciano's so good. And Carry-On's another one that's coming up also. But I think it's more, I've had it as a single varietal, and I don't think it's really all that great as a single varietal. But when you mix it with something, blend it with something, it's really,
it's a good
really
blender.
Good.
It does make a good straight varietal. The problem with Carignan is it's such a small cluster packed real tight.
Right.
I think ripening is an issue with getting that thing really ripe. But if you go to like southern Spain or, in there where they actually do straight Carignana, their wines are amazing, but you got to like tannins.
Yeah.
You got to like tannins.
Well, you're right though. We as in Texas, viticulture, we need to start looking at other varietals out there that's available that we should be able to grow here. I mean, if we can't grow it here in North Texas, we should be able to grow it in the high plains. If we can't do it in the high plains, we should be able to do it in far West Texas, out the Davis Mountain areas. If we can't do it there, we got the hill countries. And if we can't do it there, we got East Texas. Notice I said East Texas last. Because there's a lot of humidity there, a lot of water going on there.
But that's really just a matter of just choosing the right varietals to grow.
Though, and there was a winery over in East Texas that did traditional Bordeaux-style wines, Italian-style wines from fruit grown in that area. It's no longer in business anymore, sadly. It made some seriously good wines. But you can grow that stuff. I don't know what she was doing, but talking about Pellegrina, which is no longer in business. But man, her wines were just amazing.
You can grow anything here in Texas.
Yeah.
In fact, actually, us Texans are so hard-headed that we will find a way to make it grow here.
Yeah.
Yes, I believe that.
I mean, we'll go out there and beat the vine every day and you're going to grow. But we will make anything
We're determined.
grow. We're determined. We're stubborn. We're bullheaded, as they would say. We're going to make it grow here in Texas. And I think that's one of the reasons why I'm so Texas proud, is because, I mean, when they tell us you can't do that, first thing that comes out of my mouth, hold my beer and watch.
Yeah. That's it.
But
the resiliencies of Texans, that's what people, when you go to, I tell people this all the time, Texans go over to Europe and go over to other parts of the country. They tell them, I'm from Texas. Oh, they get a kick out of that.
Oh, yeah. Well, so one of the things that really cracks me up, and I love telling this story, is about TV Munson and how Texas single-handedly saved the wine industry globally. And they look at me like, what? And then,
there's statues to TV Munson in France.
Yeah. And I would tell
with his cowboy hat.
Yes. Yeah. And I would tell them the story and they're like, are you serious? I'm like, yeah. he came over here and he got Texas rootstock and sent it over there, and he was able to save a lot of vines.
Yes.
Then one of the other biggest things that always cracks me up, and why they don't guess this, is I tell them, of all the 50 states in the United States, which one started making wine first? I mean, come on. I mean, that's an easy answer one. And because obviously we're talking about Texas wines and stuff. And I ask them this question, and they look at me like, California. And then I'm like, we're in Texas and we're talking about Texas wines. You should have answered Texas on that. And then when I explain to them about mission grapes and all of that kind of stuff, they look at me and they're fascinated. And I tell them that, yes, Texas didn't start growing grapes and making wine before California as a profitable thing. But we started growing grapes and making wine long before anybody else has. And we saved the world. So you could have your grapes over in California.
Right.
It is, yes. So Texas does span, yes, all those regions. As a matter of fact, the Burgundy was the last region in France to give in to grafting its vines onto like a Texas rootstock.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's always comical. It's always fun to talk about that,
Right.
and tell people that because they don't understand that.
Yeah, and that's what that's what we're doing here. Like when we replant in 2026, we're going to replant our Tempranillo onto a different rootstock, but that rootstock is still based from Texas vines. It's still a hybrid of Texas vines.
See, that's what I like right there. That's what I like. So, so I guess to, kind of tie off the talk about the industry, that's really where it's going to go. I think with Texas, I think it's important for it to think about finding its sweet spot with growing grapes that maybe not a lot of people have heard of, but they grow great in our climate, right.
And that Texas can call its own.
So let's talk about real quick how well 2024 was for growing grapes. I will say, for me, from what I have seen in the vineyards, that we had that lot of rain in the early spring that forced a lot of growth that happened. We didn't have that late frost, so that helped with bud breaks. We didn't lose a lot of bud breaks this year. And then during the summertime, we had those big, amazing clusters, beautiful clusters. And I know I'm going to say this from harvesting out at RK and working out in the vineyard out there. The vines, like literally, I can do off a couple of vines and then come back the next week. And those same vines I just cleared off last week, I got to redo them again.
Oh,
yeah. They were growing worse than a 5-year-old child's hair. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
And the clusters that we were pulling off, I heard from multiple places, this year's growth of grapes was astronomical from last year and then the year before that. In fact, actually, they said this was the best year in 5 years.
Bumper crop.
Yeah.
We talked about this a little bit earlier. I started realizing this a few years ago, and it was my years at Total Wine that started me thinking about this. If you go look at Bordeaux and you look at Texas, match the vintages. Mm-hmm. Every time Bordeaux has a banner year, so does Texas. Started about the early part of the last decade, but you look at 2015, 2016, 2018, fabulous years in Bordeaux, fabulous years with Texas fruit. So our climate, I don't know, it's a different climate, but there's something about it that kind of makes you wonder that we're pretty close to what they do, which is my argument about aging your Texas wines. Right. They need to be treated a lot like Left Bank Bordeaux in some instances. Right. And if you can do it, like we talked about, is gets sold young, gets drank young. If you can age your Texas stuff, you'll be mesmerized at how good they can be in 6, 8, 9 years.
Oh yeah, most definitely.
Yeah, the quality of Texas wine is, I would say that the flavors, the blends, they're almost like halfway between French and California wines. And you're right, because Bordeaux sometimes has some pretty tough weather patterns.
Yep. 2013 was terrible. That was the year of the freeze in Texas, which virtually no fruit was harvested out of the high plains because of 27 degrees on like May 2nd or something like that.
It's crazy.
And then you get the polar vortex year, which, so we get that 1 or 2 years a decade that really throw things out of whack here in Texas. And the one cool thing, though, about Texas, which is different than what California has, is the weather and things. Every year, the Texas wines drink a little different. Yep. Some years better than others. And most Texas wineries don't engineer their wines.
I was literally fixing to make that comment.
That's the thing. It's a comforting thing when you can go to a wine every year and it's going to be about the same, some years better, but that gets boring to me after a while.
Yes.
And the cool thing is you wait to see, oh man, that Montepulciano was great. Like we have this 21 Monte, which is light and it's fresh and it's got this brightness about it, high acid, really nice wine. Well, the 24 Montepulciano here was so ripe. It's in the tanks over there, probably somewhere around 15.5%. It's going to be a beast of a wine. And I'm sitting here waiting for this, because I help process that stuff. So I'm sitting here waiting, let's say another 18 months to go about when this gets bottled. And that's what's really exciting about the industry in Texas is every year you're going to get thrown a different kind of wine, even though it's from the same winery, same winemaker. But this is the fun thing about wine and why it's different every year. And, you pour it in a glass and you start thinking about, what was that? That was a hot summer that year. Yeah, you can tell it's been hot. And so that's the fun part about it.
I like how you brought that up because one of the things that I tell a lot of people when they drink California wines is like a lot of the winemakers there in California, they have a recipe for their wine.
Right.
And they break it down completely to the molecular level and then they bring it back up. And it's always the same. I said, you can go out there and get a 2017, 2018, 2019, all the way up to a 2022. And I guarantee you it will taste the same.
Yeah.
But you come to Texas and you get the same varietal and you do it the same years, I guarantee you every year you can taste the difference in the terroir that happened that year because you can taste it every time. Because we don't want to break it down so far that it destroys the taste. It destroys the structure of that wine. We want you to taste what we felt that year. So if it was 9,000 degrees outside, we want you to taste in that bottle.
So there's a little West Texas dirt on the nose of this Black Label cab that stays in the glass. It's really cool.
Yeah.
You get that. And, it's going back and building varietals and stuff. I have a lot of stuff like, especially with Montepulcianos where I've been drinking them from the same winery for 12 years. 14, 15, 16. I can see the differences in them, and that's what wine's about. Should be different every year and should be exciting.
Yeah, it should be like a new Christmas gift every year.
And when a winemaker can make something really good out of a tough vintage, that's another thing that, and you don't get a lot of that out of, not that there's anything wrong with it. You like Silver Oak wines. I've been drinking that wine for 30 years. You can go back to it every year. It's going to taste the same. If that's what you like to drink, that's fine. But it gets, like I said, it gets boring after a while to constantly drink the same thing.
You need some excitement in your life.
Yeah.
As a winemaker, I could take a little less excitement sometimes.
Yeah.
But I understand. I agree with Bill on that. That's one of the unique things about Texas is you get this vintage to vintage variation. Yeah. And that's really what makes it exciting.
Yeah.
And I don't think there's many wine regions in the world where you get that. You drink Australian wines, they're pretty unilaterally the same every year. You go to Portugal and Spain, you're going to get just about the same thing every year. But I think Texas, that's one thing unique we have here is Mother Nature's going to throw a slider in the dirt at you every now and again. And you have to decide how you're going to combat that. Are you going to force your wines into something they don't want to be from the grapes? Or are you going to just take that path and say, okay, these grapes they're not going to be this or that. So I've got to take them in this direction. So that's really cool.
And I definitely love that about Texas winemakers because they'll look at what we got out there and like, well, I was going to make that. Well, now I have to go make this now. And I don't know about you, Chris, but one thing that I've learned working out in the vineyard at Arcade with Amy and Grayson is I would take some grapes and during the season while, trimming vines and pruning and stuff, I would taste the grapes, just to see how they were progressing. And by the time we got ready to harvest, they actually tasted completely different from when they first started veraison, like completely day and night. And so I sat there and I was wondering how's Grayson going to take these wines? How is he going to take this and to make it into his own little signature stuff? And I like watching him. Grayson, I love you, brother. I sat there one day and I was asking about the chemistry. And if I start talking IT stuff with you, you're going to glass over really fast.
No, it's okay. My career was in internet marketing.
Okay. Well, if I talk to you in IT, you're going to glass over on that.
I am going to do that.
And so when I started talking the chemistry with Grayson, I glassed over and I'm like, honestly, I give you the best image. You ever seen this, the Simpsons where Homer's got that monkey with the cymbals crashing up there? I felt like that. I was like, I have no clue what he just said. And then it was like 3 or 4 days later, it finally just like I wake up and I'm like, oh, I understand now what he's talking about.
That makes sense.
It made sense. And so that's the one thing I love about the Texas wine industry, because you have to sit there and you're like, okay, my grape is not what I want it to be. I'm going to turn it into this, you know.
That's what a winemaker from California I was talking to said. There's no bad grapes in California. There's just bad winemakers. So it's kind of the flip. So the opposite.
What was the saying is you can make good wine from bad grapes, but you can't make a good wine from a bad winemaker.
That sounds about right. Yeah. So Texas winemakers they're tough. They've been through it all. We've been through freeze, hail. There was a tornado that came through last year.
Yeah, May 29th.
KK's property. Yeah.
Missed us by maybe a mile.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
Y'all got that here, but that hit that Valley View. But the year before that one, it hit KK's property and their vineyard.
So Texas winemakers have to go through a lot, but that actually makes you a very experienced and resilient winemaker too. Like it makes you fearless in a way. Yeah. It also means that with that kind of experience, you're able to make good wine year after year, no matter what Mother Nature throws at you.
Oh yeah. Well, I'm going to throw this out here. I'm going to throw this question to y'all, and I want y'all to tell me what y'all think the answer is, okay? How many acres is currently under vine in Texas right now?
I'm going to say somewhere around 5850.
I was going to say in the 5,000s as well.
According to A&M, 10,000.
10,000?
Really?
And that was of last year.
Huh. Okay. Now that's a surprise to me. Yeah. I thought it was in the 5,000.
I thought it was 5,000 or 6,000 myself. And I was looking that up and because I knew the topic we were going to talk about here. Yeah, and I wanted to boast Texas stuff. And so when I saw that, I was like, we have 10,000 under vine right now. That's insane.
If I'm correct about this, that would put us beyond New York now.
Yeah.
That would make us number 4.
Yeah, it would.
Yeah.
Even though some articles, I mean, it's funny when you read stuff. I keep switching the cameras to the wrong people. But it's kind of interesting reading online and how they list us, Texas, in grape growing regions. And in some articles, especially if you hit like the West Coast, they put us at 5, 6, or 7. If you read over the East Coast side, they put us at like 3, 4, and 5.
Of course, they don't want to lose their position.
So it's kind of funny reading this and seeing where we're placed at.
But isn't that interesting though? Because I see so many articles about Virginia wines, East Coast wines, New York wines, Long Island, Finger Lakes.
But one thing I hear about is people come here like, your wines are so much better than where we're at. I said, where y'all at? They said, oh, we're cool. Virginia, we're from New Hampshire, we're from New York. And I'm like, that's Texas for you. And then I'll pop my collar a little.
There you go.
I guess maybe that's because I think most Texas wines are drank in Texas. Yeah. I mean, we ship to all 50 states and we're shipping right now. Yeah. But
I like that you brought that up. I actually read this article, and this is from last year as well. Texas is now starting to distribute more wines outside of the borders of Texas now than we ever have. Yeah. And actually, Michael McClendon actually told me this the other day when we was out at Sage, that he's actually making wines for several other states right now using Texas fruit.
So he's actually taking Texas fruit to other states. Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's kind of what we were talking about before, about there's some California wineries coming in, planting Texas vineyards and actually shipping the grapes back. And that's can sometimes be cheaper than
he's actually making the wine here in Texas.
Yeah.
At Sage.
Okay.
He's making the wine and shipping the wine off to new places.
Off to
into other states and all like that.
Oh, I see. All right. Yeah.
Is that not awesome or what?
That is, yeah.
Yeah. By the way, if you've never gone and hung out with Michael McClendon,
he's a hoot.
Oh my gosh,
I'd like to sometime.
Yeah. We got there because he lives. They're in Nacogdoches, right down the road from my parents' house, and we get there and they open up a bottle of sparkling right away, and I swear that was a 6-foot fountain that came off that bottle. and they had a black Spanish sparkling.
Oh, I'd like to try that.
I'm trying to think. It's actually, there was a vineyard there. I think it was called Rusty Spur there in East Texas.
Rustic Spur.
Not Rustic Spur.
No, Rusty Spur.
Because Rustic is in Fredericksburg.
Right.
This one's over in East Texas. Rusty Spur.
Yeah.
And they had black Spanish sparkling. And I'm like, Holy cow.
You can do some really interesting things with Black Spanish. Like I know Hack does his Madeira, his Black Spanish Madeira.
So
with that,
one of the new wineries that opened up in East Texas called Huntsman, they have a Black Spanish that, holy crap, it is so jammy. I'm like, man, I need a piece of bread now with some butter on it.
Years ago, when I was working at Inwood, Dan used to make the wines for Vineyard at Florence. And he actually, what he told me the best way to handle Black Spanish was that he actually does it in a Ripasso style.
Really?
Yeah.
Interesting.
He doesn't make it anymore, but that's what to get the funk out of it, kind of, it's got that pruny, funky skin, he did it as a Ripasso, and it was actually pretty tasty, but.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I have to try that out. So, Chris, we know more about you today. That I found out, for whatever reason, I don't know why I did not know this, is that you are the president of the Drink North Texas Association.
Yeah, the North Texas Winery Association.
North Texas Wine
That's okay.
Association.
No, the Drink North Texas is one of our big festivals.
Yes.
Yeah.
So let's talk about last year, how last year went.
Sure.
And the Gainesville, how successful that was. And then let's talk about the future, what's coming up for this year.
That's a great topic. So the North Texas Winery Association is an association of 40 plus wineries up here in the North Texas region. And you know how I was talking before about how I don't want Texas to lose its camaraderie between its wineries.
Yep.
That was one of the reasons why we started that association, because we wanted to see the wineries in North Texas band together and create wine tourism, almost like a wine country region right here, just for those people from DFW all the way to the Red River. It's such a unique area because of the four forks of the Trinity River Valley that kind of thread through the area. That deposits almost like 4 different soil types. And so when you plant vineyards here, when you're making wine in North Texas, it's a very unique kind of ecological region because of that. And we wanted to see those wineries really come together because there's almost between 7 and 8 million people now in DFW.
I know, that's crazy.
It's a massive amount of folks. And Dallas-Fort Worth is actually one of the number 1 wine markets in the country.
Really?
I think it might actually be larger than Chicago now, if I'm not wrong about that.
Okay, so when you say that, you're referring to because we know that the Hill Country is like number 2 on the most visited.
Yeah, that's like for like wine trails or like people.
We're talking about
driving to a wine region. We're talking about just consumption, restaurant sales.
Gotcha. Okay.
Bottle of wine sales, total wine, things like that.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah. As a matter of fact, a lot of California wineries, DFW is like their number 1 market.
Oh yeah. I talked to a lot of people from California a lot of times.
Yeah. And so we recognize how special this region is. And so we wanted the folks in North Texas to realize that there's great wineries in their backyard.
Yes.
And so we created this association. We do 3 trails a year. We have a Valentine's Day wine trail. We have a spring wine trail, a fall wine trail. But along with that, though, we also have 2 main festivals now throughout the year. One is the Gainesville Wine Festival. It's in the fall in the city of Gainesville up here. Gainesville's on track to kind of become the heart of the North Texas wine country. They're putting a lot of investment into the wine region. Gainesville is doing a big festival now called the Wine and Country Festival. It was our first one this year, but it's going to get larger and larger each year. It combines wine with country music. So 2 great things up here in North Texas for people to do. And that's in Gainesville. So it's just right up Interstate 35, just north of Denton. Yep. Right, up 35. And then the second big festival we're going to be doing is called Drink North Texas. And so for the first time this year, that's going to be in the spring, and it's going to be held at the Frontiers of Flight Museum at the Dallas Love Airport. So it's all indoors. You don't have to worry about, your tent being blown halfway across the county. We've chased, how many of us have chased our tents across the counties for those festivals in the spring, especially, right, with all the wild weather. But the great thing about that festival is that you get to not only drink wine from, say, 12 to 15 wineries that are going to be inside the museum, but we actually get the run of the museum. We actually rented the museum out for the day. And while you're drinking your wine, you get to tour the aircraft. The museum actually has an F-18 Super Hornet. It actually has one of the capsules from the Apollo program. You can actually see the scorch marks on it from when it re-entered the atmosphere.
That's awesome.
And so you get to taste wine. We're going to have, vendors there. We're going to have food as well. But the great thing, of course, is just you get to see all these incredible aircraft.
Right.
They have a model, the full-scale model of the Wright brothers flyer, the original, flyer. Not the one from the Smithsonian, but it's a model of it.
When I look at that thing, I'm kind of curious how scary were they when that thing finally took off the ground.
I mean, talk about courage, right?
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, we've all seen the movie, The McKinney Hawk doing it.
Yes.
But when you see it in person at the Frontier Flight Museum, you're just in shock. You're like, okay, these guys had some serious courage to get on that thing and just say, I'm going for this.
And laying down while doing it too at that,
Yes, right. And they laid
first.
down, yes. So it's going to be the first time we have our festival in that museum. It's going to be a great location because if you can actually fly into Dallas Love Airport and take a shuttle from the concourse directly to the museum and not even have to park if you wanted to. But of course, I mean, because it's an airport, there's great parking around it anyway.
Yep.
So we're extremely excited about that. But it means a lot to us because we started out that association with maybe 10 wineries, actually less than that. I think maybe just like 4 or 5, just a handful. And we pulled it together thinking, are we ever really going to be the size of like the Texas Hill Country Wine Trail? And slowly but surely over time, it's just built up. And now there's 40 plus wineries in the association. And the wine trail is actually across about 12 different counties. So our wine trails last almost more than a month now. And you get to travel. You can go weekend to weekend. You can just travel all these great wineries, meet all the winemakers. Your ticket includes tastings at all the wineries. It's a great thing to do. Yeah. And if you don't want to do the trail, you can just come to one of the festivals and you can just meet all the wineries right there.
Do it all at once. And what day is this again?
The Frontier Flight Museum Drink North Texas Festival is going to be May 31st.
So on Memorial Day weekend?
Yes. May 31st. Yeah.
The weekend after.
Well, that's a weekend after.
Yeah, weekend after that.
All right.
Yeah.
I was sitting there thinking like, okay. But
Yeah, weekend after.
It's the first Monday.
I always get my days in May mixed up. My birthday's May 13th. So I go, I always kind of try to think about May that way.
At least you don't have a leap year birthday.
I'm going to have a leap year birthday this year?
I'm saying, thank God you don't have a leap year birthday.
Oh, leap year birthday. Yes. Right.
I feel bad for those people.
Although sometimes my birthday is on Friday the 13th, but it's always been a lucky day for me, though. But so the Drink North Texas is on May 31st. And then Gainesville, we're going to have it again in the fall this year. The fall weather was fantastic.
Oh, it was amazing.
So Gainesville is kind of our outdoor festival.
Yeah, that was amazing. And I know everybody that I've talked to said they loved the Gainesville one. They just had a blast. The food trucks are out there were so amazing. In fact, I don't know if you actually got ate at the barbecue one that was out there.
I did. I got their brisket sandwich. And I always have to try the barbecue.
Did you eat the pizza also from the pizza truck?
I didn't get a chance to get that, but it smelled incredible when I was walking past it.
I bought a pizza and I sat it down for just a second, and my mom and my stepdad reached over and ate it, and I walked away for just a moment, and I came back and I'm like, the pizza's gone. I didn't get a slice of it. My mom bought some of the barbecue fries, came over there and sat down. It's like, here, you can have some of this. I'm like, okay. So I'm sitting there taking care of some few things. I turn back around and they're gone.
And the fries are gone.
I'm like, do I get to eat? But I will say the Gainesville, from what I saw, was very successful. People came out. They loved it. A lot of positive feedback from it, and I'm really happy for North Texas for putting that on.
I am too. The team did a great job. I have to give a lot of shout outs to the team, to the executive directors of the association.
You got your platform right now.
Like Chris McIntosh helped to lead the Gainesville event set up there, and then of course we have KK Hartman on the team. There's so many other folks. So Bob Landon is the chairman. He was the chairman this year, So it's a great association because the wineries do have that. They still have that camaraderie, and they help each other out. You don't really compete with other wineries in North Texas. You're kind of competing with yourself. It's like, how much better can I make the wine this year than I made it last year? And so it's a fantastic thing. It's great to see this wine region take shape in North Texas.
Yep. And, a lot of people don't realize when they come into the tasting room, they're like, oh, I go to Fred Expert. And I said, so let me ask you a question. Would you rather drive 1 hour to drink good wine and have a whole day of drinking wine? Or would you rather drive 5 hours and have to stay the night and drink a whole bunch of wine? And they're like, well, I'd rather spend an hour driving. I was like, well, then stay here in North Texas.
Yeah.
You can go an hour and a half and you can hit Valley View, you can hit St. Joe, you can hit Monte, you can hit Bridgeport, you can hit Sunset, and you can hit a whole bunch right there. Or you can go east and you can hit, Salina here. You can go over here and hit Friendsville. Is it Friendsville or Farmersville?
Farmersville and Greenville.
In Greenville,
Yeah.
you got all those wineries right there.
Sure. So Denison out that way.
Yeah. And then of course, Cleburne is blowing up all of a sudden now on wineries because I think they got 6 now over there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So they're blowing up. So, you can go down there. You can spend an hour and drive down to Cleburne, So you can go an hour within anywhere from the DFW area and get good wine. And then guess what? You can go back home and be in your own bed.
Yeah, that's the best part about it.
Exactly.
Yes. And there's actually a lot of tour buses now. And if you don't want to drive at all, definitely check out one of the tour buses. You can go to northtexaswine.com. Mm-hmm. That's the URL. We can probably put it down in the comment section of the video, but it's northtexaswine.com. And you can build your own trail. You can check out the different tour operators. Yeah, you can rent a bus.
Well, then we also have Texas Wine Lover app too.
Yes, the Texas Wine Lover app has many of those wineries in the app.
And it also shows a lot of those tour buses, like what's one over in
Red River Tours?
Red River Tours, yeah. Mm-hmm. So they're doing a great job over there. Mm-hmm. I'm glad they started that up because somebody needed to start one over there.
Well, we do need more tour bus operators, it's true. So if you're out there listening to this, start a tour bus operation. Well, we will fill it up.
So here's what's crazy. Let's talk about tour bus operators and stuff. It's hard to have one in East Texas.
No, why is it hard to have one in East Texas?
Because a lot of the wineries, you have maybe a pocket, like 2 or 3 wineries in one area, and then the next one is like an hour and a half drive away.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
I see. Yeah, no, the North Texas wineries are really they're pretty much equidistant from each other.
Yes.
You're always within range of the next winery when
30
you get
minutes at least minimum. Mm-hmm. But like you go over to let's just say Kiefersall, which by the way, if you do not drink Kiefersall Winery, I know this is about North Texas, but if you not drink Kiefersall, go check Kiefersall out.
Oh yeah, yeah. They're even doing spirits now too, vodka, right?
Yes, let's not talk We're not talking about the bad times, the good times.
The good times.
But you've got Kiefersall there, you got Terra Winery, you got 3 Ps. You've got a couple of them right there in that area. But then if you want to go to like Los Pinos, it's an hour and 15-minute drive. If you want to go to Enoch Stomp or go to Twisted Pine, those are hour and a half drives. So there's a lot of wineries there, but they're just so far spread apart. Mm-hmm. So again, you're going to have to spend a weekend and go out there and drink. Maybe we should get Ron Martin to open up a tour bus out there.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't think he wants to do that. I think he's retired.
If you do go to Kiefersall, you need to make that your last stop so you can have dinner there.
Oh.
That restaurant's something else.
So let me tell you a little funny story. Okay. So we did the We Know Texas Vino, Texas Wine Lover takes over Kiefersall. Okay. And so we all got there and we had a really nice episode and we all went to have dinner and stuff. And since my weight loss surgery, I can't have ice cream and milk. It just makes me sick, double over sick. And Ron was opening up some Barrel 33. We're doing a elevated tasting at his house. Okay. Not elevated, a vertical tasting. Sorry. And so he had opened up 3 different vintages of this. And I'm sitting there like, I am so sick to my stomach. I don't know if I can drink this. And so he poured the first one, and I think it was a 2010, and it was good. I'm not gonna lie, it was really good, but I just couldn't drink it. My stomach was hurting so bad. So we're sitting outside, and me and Neil, Addie, were sitting there swirling the wines a little bit, and I took another drink of it, and I was like, oh man, this is so much better. We've been sitting there for like 30 minutes, and it just kind of opened up, and it was so much better. Well, then all of a sudden, my stomach started feeling a lot better also. And in the Bible, it says, when you're feeling ill, drink wine. And I'm like, I found the cure for lactose intolerance. So we sat there and we drank the next two. So we drank, I think it was a 15 and then a 20. And after you let it open it up for like 30 minutes, it was really, really good. But man, I was so sick to my stomach, and then I started drinking more wine. I was like, I'm feeling a lot better now. But my story
as part of my wine permit, I can't say things, like that wine's good for you, but I'm going to tell you right now, it's good for you.
Yeah. Well, but my point
in moderation.
Yes, in moderation, always. But my point is, that restaurant there, if you've not eaten there, holy cow, the food there is astronomical, and they obviously serve Keepersall wine there, and make sure they always pair you the wine with what you're eating.
Okay.
And that's one thing I love about that restaurant. Yep. So guys, we are coming to the end of this. We've sitting here, we've talked to now almost how long we've been doing this now? Almost 3 hours now.
Close.
So is there anything else y'all want to add to not only just Texas wine industry, but Texas wine itself, or even just the wine industry itself? What are you looking forward to in 2025 that's coming up? Right now we're fixing to have this polar vortex that just came in that I'm afraid is going to hurt some of these vines. So what is your prediction for 2025?
For 2025, I'm really seeing a turnaround actually in the wine industry. That's what I'm predicting.
Okay.
I think the last 4 to 5 years have been some of the wildest business climate I've been through. Mm-hmm. From pandemics to high inflation, it's been very difficult to call where things are going. Mm-hmm. But I feel like that 2025 now has a chance to be to bring some stability to the industry.
Nice.
Yeah. I think that there's a lot of wineries now in Texas that have been making wine for over a decade mm-hmm. now, and they've got their feet underneath them. Mm-hmm. They, for Eden Hill especially, it's taken us these many years just to find the vineyards that we want to get grapes from. We now have vineyards that we've planted that are coming online in 2025. And so I feel like that 2025 is going to be a year of positive change in the wine industry.
Nice. I like that.
That's where my head's at right now.
Nice.
And it's the learning curve. I've always said in the wine industry, you learn something every day. Mm-hmm. I have for the past 30 some odd years, I've been drinking wine. So you want to keep that going, both in the vineyards and in the cellars, and keep experimenting with things, try different things. And sometimes I feel like there's things that are made just because that's,
right.
what's available. But changing things, I'm not going to say everybody needs to shoot from the hip, but be open-minded about things in the wine industry. That's the one thing that the wine industry has the ability to. You can always try something different. May not always work, but
try it.
Exactly right. Try it.
I mean, if it fails, throw it in a whiskey barrel and it'll be okay.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, there's always that. But it's the one thing that we've had, like Chris was talking, the last 4 years has been kind of a roller coaster. We're very white wine light here. We only make a couple different varieties in white wines because 21 everything was almost wiped out and then it was short. So I'd like to see some new white grapes coming in. We talk about Italy and Spain being the workhorse grapes in the state with, Vermentino and Trebbiano, but I'd like to see something like Macabeo or something come in from Spain, or Viura, or something that's, bright, crisp,
big and crazy. And
I'm a big Macabeo fan. It's hard to find straight Macabeo out of Spain, but it's kind of like, drinks like a big Chablis.
Okay.
They do it unoaked, but it's got big mouthfeel and it's got deep stone fruit notes to it. It's a really nice wine. So I'd like to see something like that come into the state. We're a little light in white grapes in the state, I think.
I'm going to have to give Andrew over at Lonesome Vine a hard time about this. Have you ever gone out to his tasting room and actually talked to him about grapes, different wine grapes and stuff, and what he does?
Not about the grapes, but
okay. So every time I go out there and we start talking about wine grapes and different varietals and all of that, he has his, I love this man for doing this. He has this big periodic table of grapes.
That's cool.
And they're all listed.
You can see that square cloud too. He's got that same table. Yeah.
And it's funny because you can actually see the color. It lists the color of that grape and what it looks like as a wine all through there. And it cracks me up because every time I talk to him about grapes and talking about the color and the clarity, all of that, he pulls that out and we lay it out on the table. And it's funny watching people that are in the tasting room while we're doing this, we're having this conversation. And in fact, actually, he did that for our Christmas lit party. Me and Neil were there and we were talking about it. And I don't know what grape we were talking about. And he all of a sudden there's like guest in the tasting room. He just whoops this thing right out. And we were trying to find the grape on the list and stuff. And it's just funny, but it's amazing that we have information like that we can find stuff. I agree with you, Bill. We need to get more varietals that are Spain, Italy grown here into Texas. I mean, we can do all the French stuff. We can do all that. But as where Texas lines up in the world with Spain and all that, we line up perfectly with those areas. And so we should be able to grow any of that. It might be rough for the first go around, but we should be able to grow it.
And I don't want my fellow Texas winemakers to be afraid that they can't sell those wines in the tasting room. They do so well in the tasting room because, as we said before, Texans love to experiment. Yeah. They like to take risks. They like to take a chance. They want something new.
Yeah.
They don't want to drink the same wines over and over again.
Yeah.
So this is a great state to do that in. Try something new.
Yeah, most definitely. Well, Chris and Bill, it's been a pleasure having you here.
Yeah,
it's been great.
Real quick, I want to hit my sponsors. We already talked about one of them. That's the Texas Wine Lover app. Great little app. Download it. Find that new winery out there. Find that wine that you want to experiment with and go forth. And then, of course, find a place to stay with that. Find some food. Whatever you're looking for, that app will help you find it. And then I don't know if y'all have heard of this place over in Mansfield called Old Vine, Texas.
I have not.
So they are a Texas exclusive wine bar.
Oh yeah, they just opened, right?
Yeah, they just opened. Eric has an amazing selection of hill country wines in there. He is actually working on trying to get some North Texas wines in there as well.
Okay.
But he's got limited room, so he can only have, I think he's got 13 different wineries in there right now. And he wants something bigger. And the plans, I'm not going to go into his plans because, plans always change. But the plans that he has for the future of what he wants to do there is massive. And I like what he's doing, and I support it 100% because he's supporting Texas wine. By the way, West Cave, I want to drop their name real quick.
It's okay. Margaret Allen Fetty, know them well.
They have a Rosé Syrah that is absolutely, not Syrah, Cab Franc. Rosé Cab Franc, that is absolutely amazing. And Old Vine, Texas has it on tap.
Nice.
And let me tell you something, that just a little bit of carbonation to that is so good. It just makes that red wine so crisp. It's like, in fact, the first time I drank it, it reminded me of, it had a lot of tobacco smell to it. But they poured me a big glass and it had a lot of fresh strawberry smells. So it's amazing how from a little taste to a big glass, it changed. So go check out Eric at Old Vine, Texas. They've got something great going on out there. Now comes to the grand finale of the podcast. We all know we do quotes on this podcast, okay?
Okay.
So here's a short one, okay? Wine is the mirror of the heart.
Wine is the mirror of the heart.
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't have a lot of explanation on that, but I thought that was a very good quote. I mean, if you have a cold heart, you're going to drink a cold wine.
I was trying to come up with a metaphor there with that. Yeah.
I don't know if that's actually what the really mean of it is. And if you got a warm heart, you're going to be drinking red wine. I don't know if that's actually true or not, but it actually sounded like a good quote. And this one right here, I debated whether or not doing this, but I decided to do it anyway. Drink wine and you will sleep well. Sleep, you will not sin. Avoid sin, and you will be saved. Ergo, drink wine and be saved.
There you go.
That's a good connection.
I mean, come on. I mean, it's a long fetch one, but come on. It's really funny. I liked it. So, but I wanted to share that with y'all. Guys, it has been a pleasure of having y'all on the show and helping bring in season 3 of We Know Texas Vino. Okay.
We're thrilled. We're honored to be the ones to bring it in.
Yeah. It's I can't believe this is season 3. It feels like yesterday. In fact, you and I were just talking about
yes, we were.
Here,
yeah.
It's been 2 years already. Yeah. It's been 2 years already. A lot of people don't know this. We are heard in 49 countries now. I'm hitting on 13,000 downloads right now. And Ron Martin's still a number one episode with 700 downloads.
Well, Texas counts as a country. So make that 50 countries.
That's right.
Exactly.
There you go.
Exactly. So, guys, this is Will.
This is Chris
Hornbaker.
And Bill.
This is We Know Texas Vino.
This is the first
Cheers.
part of the show, and just wait for the second part. You can catch this episode in its entirety on YouTube later this week, and then part 2 will be released next week. Also, do not forget that January the 25th at 1 p.m. at 555 Winery in Valley View, Texas, this is our Season 3 kickoff party. Come have a glass of wine with us and ask us questions. You never know who's just going to pop in. And this year is going to be a great year. We're going to kick it up another notch, so be on the lookout for things to come. Till then, listeners, cheers.